Hello there, and welcome to What If, where we create a blueprint of an idea that could possibly be used in a future game of an already existing franchise. Today we are looking into two possible unique paragraphs for Dead by Daylight, with the two paragraphs being based off of Five Nights at Freddy's and Rule of Rose. A paragraph differs from a full chapter as it only contains a single character. So, for our sakes, I'll be doing both of these today, with each of these paragraphs being considered their own unique release, as the two won't directly be related to each other. But as they both represent very different aspects of the horror genre, they could both very easily fit into Dead by Daylight. Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy. The Forgotten. Fredbear's Family Diner was a small, local family restaurant that catered towards children with their high-energy entertainment via singing and dancing animatronic mascots. Their first two animatronics were called Fredbear and Spring Bonnie, but they were eventually retired and replaced with what would end up being the restaurant's most notable characters: Freddy Fazbear, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy. While many other mascots would come and go, these were almost always the fan favorites. The restaurant seemed to have a bright future, until an incident known as the Bite of 83. Due to the horrors of what happened, the location was closed down, and a much smaller establishment was opened, called Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Here, the animatronics would be used to entertain children, and things were looking good for the franchise, until a man dressed in an old, retired Spring Bonnie suit lured 5 children into the back of the pizzeria and murdered them. The rest of the Fazbear legacy was filled with pain and death. Many souls were forever tainted by the horrors that seemed to follow, but eventually, the wider populace forgot about what happened, and the deaths were all but forgotten. The children who died that day weren't able to pass on, not after what happened, and they remained forever trapped in the animatronics that their bodies were stuffed into after their deaths. While there was at least one soul who tried to ease their pain, one wonders if they will ever truly know peace. For those who are fans of the Five Nights at Freddy series, I probably don't even need to go into all of the different possible costumes that the characters could have, as there are multiple iterations for each character, including their toy and nightmare versions, along with some funny, unique ones for each. Who says this game isn't actually funny sometimes? If we wanted to talk about legendaries associated with these characters, you could replace one or multiple characters with other animatronics that have shown up, including Puppet, Springtrap, and Circus Baby. Thanks to how long the series has been running, you kinda have an endless amount of characters to choose from. The Forgotten's special ability is Heartless Soul. The Forgotten's ability is split into two different parts. The first is that all 4 of the killers will spawn into the map at the same time, but only one can be operated by the player at any given moment. If the player wishes, they can move their consciousness into another unit by holding down the action key and selecting the unit they wish to travel to. After a short time, the new unit will boot up, and the player will control that character. If a survivor is hooked, and an uncontrolled unit is within a 64-meter radius of the hook, they will automatically boot up and leave the radius. If there is more than one survivor hooked, and there is nowhere that the unit can move, they will move to the furthest location and deactivate there. Along with this, the Forgotten cannot feel physical pain, nor feel empathy for the pain of others. Due to this, the Forgotten cannot be stunned by pallets, blinded, or otherwise impeded by any perk that would normally stun them. Instead, they have an invisible damage counter. After this damage counter has reached its threshold, the unit in question will break and cannot be controlled for another 240 seconds. To combat this, certain perks like Decisive Strike are allowed to be used more than once against this killer. The Forgotten's real power, though, comes into what happens if a player is sacrificed on the hook. Upon being sacrificed on the hook, there is a short window of time where the Forgotten can grab the player's body. Doing so will allow them to place it into the shell of another member of the Forgotten. If the killer doesn't reach the survivor's body in time, it will be pulled from the procedural by the entity, preventing this transfer. If the Forgotten does, however, manage to add the survivor to an empty shell, the shell will then become active on its own, and will start hunting the survivors autonomously. This shell will only move at 50% movement speed outside of chase, and 90% while in chase. Along with this, they cannot pick up downed survivors, and can no longer be controlled by the player. The shells will automatically start chasing a survivor if they are within its cone of vision, prioritizing survivors based on whether they are injured and how close they are to them. If this survivor escapes a chase, the shell will begin moving around the procedural like normal. More than one of these shells can exist within a trial at any given time. If a shell manages to down a survivor, they will not remain near the fallen player and instead will immediately go back into searching mode. The Forgotten's first perk is Destructive. Once the Forgotten are on a roll, it's hard to stop their momentum. With Destructive, if the Forgotten damage a generator, wall, or pallet, then within the next 20 seconds they will automatically break through the first destructible wall or lay down pallet that they walk through without hindrance. If killers other than the Forgotten are hit by a pallet while using this perk, they will still be stunned like normal. The Forgotten's second perk is Obsessive. The Forgotten can become obsessed with certain actions, particularly if they are being pushed away. If the Forgotten hit a generator, Obsessive becomes active for 30 seconds. If this generator is worked on during that time, the generator is highlighted with a blue aura. If the Forgotten hits the generator again during this time period, the generator will regress an additional 10%, and Obsessive will be re-added to the generator. This perk can stack on itself multiple times, with each time the Forgotten coming back to the generator adding an additional 10% each time. The maximum amount that Obsessive can regress a generator by at any given moment is 50%. If the Forgotten hits a different generator, the new generator becomes the Obsessed Gen, and the original one loses its aura. The Forgotten's final perk is Happy Birthday. The Forgotten do have some vestiges of their past memories sealed deep within them, and they feel obliged to celebrate someone's special day. At the beginning of the trial, one of the survivors will be marked as it being their birthday, and therefore is obliged to special treatment, though only the killer knows whose birthday it is. With this perk, the killer will immediately start with Bloodlust 1 when chasing the birthday survivor. But since it's their special day, the killer's goal isn't actually to sacrifice them. Instead, the goal will be to make sure that this survivor is the last one alive in the procedural, and then down them. After the birthday survivor has been downed, and they are the last survivor in the procedural, the killer will be given a prompt similar to what they would have when killing a survivor with a Mori. But instead of killing the survivor, the killer will yeet them out through the exit gate, forcing them to leave the trial. This counts as a sacrifice for the killer and an escape for the survivor in question. If the birthday survivor is killed, then the killer receives a penalty when chasing other survivors, slowing the rate that they would normally receive bloodlust. The killer does not receive this penalty if the survivor disconnects. Jennifer, the poor, unlucky girl. Rule of Rose is a game that on the surface may seem very similar to Haunting Ground, but when you get down to the nitty-gritty, it's much more of a psychological horror than it would initially appear to be. In the game, you play as 19-year-old Jennifer as she finds herself trapped at an orphanage, then on a Zeppelin, for reasons, and is tormented by children who have established a private hierarchy, calling themselves the Red Crayon Aristocrats. While there, she grows attached to a dog named Brown, who helps her as she is forced to provide a gift to the aristocrats each month. And as she slowly uncovers what has happened, why she's there, and sifts through her fractured memories to uncover the promise that she had forgotten. Costumes for Jennifer are actually pretty easy since she had plenty of in-game costumes already, including her nurse, tennis, and maid outfits. If you want to go a little more unusual, you can also add her rag princess costume. And if you want to go just plain weird, yeah. There's another part of costumes that I want to mention, but we'll get to that in a moment. Jennifer's first perk is I Am Yours. Jennifer has the ability to forge deep emotional bonds with others, but these bonds can sometimes be a double-edged sword. At the beginning of a match, Jennifer and one other survivor's hearts will be connected in an eternal loving bond. This love increases all actions made around each other by 20%, except when healing each other, where they will be given a 100% speed boost. However, also due to this love, they must leave the procedural together. If Jennifer is at an exit gate, but her beloved is not within an 8-meter range of her, the entity will block the gates, preventing her from leaving. If her beloved leaves the procedural without her, Jennifer will then be allowed to leave, but must leave through the same exit gate they did. If her beloved leaves through the hatch, these restrictions are lifted. If Jennifer or her beloved are killed at some point during the procedural, the other is left with the Heartbroken status effect. This effect will decrease all actions by 15%. Jennifer's second perk is Unfortunate. If Jennifer is the first person to be hooked in a match, she will only have to be hooked twice before she is sacrificed. But if anybody is hooked before her, she will be able to be hooked up to 4 times before she is sacrificed. Her hook timer will also be increased to reflect this extra health state. If more than one survivor is running the Unfortunate perk, only the last player to be hooked will receive this extra health state. This perk increases the likelihood that the survivor will be the killer's obsession. Jennifer's final perk is Brown. If Jennifer is sacrificed or killed in a match, she will respawn in a random area as Brown. As Brown, you will not be able to work on gens, go through windows, put down pallets, nor open the exit gates, and any perks that would normally affect a survivor do not affect Brown. What Brown can do, however, is leave scratch marks in the environment, mend a survivor with deep wounds, or help a survivor get up from the dying state. Brown will only have 1 health state and cannot be killed, hooked, or sacrificed. If Brown is injured, he will immediately go into the dying state, but will be able to get back up on his own after a period of time, or if he is healed by another player. Only one person may respawn as Brown in a match. If a player has already respawned as Brown, this perk deactivates for all other players. So, in a weird way, Brown kind of acts like a secondary survivor, but he can't actually work towards any of the major goals. You could also do unique costumes for Brown, that way everybody has their own unique canine in the game. While there weren't many costumes for Brown in Rule of Rose, as he only had a black canine outfit, where he wears a cozy, a mangled toy outfit, and a crab. You could do a quote-unquote legendary outfit where he is replaced with Huey from Haunting Ground. This is probably the most unusual perk that I've come up with so far, and I doubt that this will actually make it into the game, but it seemed like a really unique idea and I thought it might be kind of fun. Which, in the end, isn't that the point of the game? And that's it for this episode of What If. I hope you enjoyed it. If you've been watching these videos for a while and haven't checked out my Patreon page yet, I would actually recommend doing so because I have some unique goals that I have set up for what will happen if I'm able to make a certain amount from Patreon. This includes future videos for legendary costumes that I don't already own, as well as additional goals that you might want to take a look at. I am going to switch up what is going to be the next episode. I was originally planning on doing something completely different, but I actually kind of want to get this out as soon as possible since I think they may actually be doing this chapter anyway, so best get my idea out front before they come up with their own. Special thanks again to Jack Freeman for supporting me on Patreon. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Over here!